Hey everyone, I'm Casey Sutton here to bring you the newest episode as part of our Public Sector podcast series. In this episode, sponsored by Intel, we'll be talking Windows 10 migrations and how Lenovo services can help. Joining me today is Lenovo's very own James North, technical specialist and all-around Windows 10 migration guru. Hey James, how are you doing?
Doing fine. How you doing?
I am great. I'm very, very pumped to have you here with us today. And I'm ready to dive in and hear what you have to say. So what do you say we get started?
Let's do it.
Okay. So let's start a little bit just by talking about why migrating to Windows 10 is such a big deal in the first place.
Well, obviously everyone needs to move to Windows 10 just because of the transition being, set by Microsoft. But really, it's become this inflection point where customers are not only determining what they need to do to move to Windows 10, but they also see there's a lot of opportunities to try to transform how they're kind of managing these devices, starting to treat these devices more like a phone, being able to implement more content, whether it's applications or data in the cloud. So there's that proliferation of changes that are coming with Windows 10 is really, it's creating an opportunity to really transform how compute really is being moved to their, being supplied to their users, whether that's secure access, being able to supply content to whatever device that they need. But also there's the biggest challenge, which is really around how do I get there? What's the readiness steps that I need to take?
I hear you. But I think the big thing is they've got to do it whether they like it or not.
Right.
But when folks actually start to make the move, they see that there are a lot of advantages.
Absolutely.
So James, to take full advantage of this transition opportunity, why would you say having help from someone like Lenovo to migrate is so important?
Well, certainly being able to have the smoothest transition as possible. I mean, when we work with customers, a lot of times it's not a core competency that they have. There's plenty of work to be done, and frankly, they're trying to do this with the same amount of staff that they've had before, sometimes even less.
Right, that's running all of their regular day-to-day operations, but now we're throwing this really big curveball at them.
Exactly right. I mean, we can, the nice thing about Windows 10, one of the nice things about Windows 10 is the flexibility to be able to offer up more devices. Not only being able to offer up more devices, but also being able to enable users to access that content from multiple devices wherever they might be, and certainly, in working with some of our customers, enabling that additional device choice can sometimes cause confusion, but actually if you do it the right way, if you work with your different lines of business and be able to work with HR, you can expand that in an effective way so people aren't confused by the choices that you have, but they're able to really provide value in these different devices, and Windows 10 allows you to be able to expand that to an effective amount. Lastly, we've talked about this for many, many years, which is at the end of the day, we want to improve the end results for our users, being able to streamline those workflows, be able to create automation, and being able to make it as simple as possible, all in an effort to increase user satisfaction, user productivity.
So would you say there are some unique challenges that public sector organizations face that it's going to make Windows 10 migrations something pretty difficult for them to do on their own?
Yeah, I mean, for government agencies, IT's pressure to be able to deliver technology that connects them to citizens in more impactful ways, but at the same time, there's so many activities just to keep the lights on, almost literally, where they have to be able to do the day-to-day work, be able to provide more meaningful outreach to their citizens, and also, by the way, they have to migrate to Windows 10.
Oh, and it's not like they're going to get any extra money, right?
Right. So the balance, the kind of that demand to balance the need for new ideas with the traditional efforts and migrating to Windows 10 is creating this kind of pinch point. At the same time, they're need to bring in new technology, to be able to these new tools, or be able to change how mission critical software is working with their environment. One of the things that we see a lot of times, especially with government, is being able to provide a level of education for them so they can do more with the same amount of folks. So it's not just enabling the deployment itself, but it's after day one of deployment.
So now you've got a new device. How
Yeah.
do I use this? And a new OS. How do I use
Right.
this to be more impactful?
Right, absolutely. When we do these training efforts or these education efforts, this is not just the end users and making sure that they can leverage all the new capabilities of Windows 10. This is also training the IT folks as well to be able to keep those tickets down, keep the time to fix down, to be able to enable the users to be able to do more. We see that a lot of times with our government customers to be able to leverage that. And a lot of times this has to do with our relationship with Microsoft to be able to bring in those resources.
Right. And I think we'll see that our education customers are facing the same sort of issues. So can you take that same question and give it that education spin?
Sure. So for education, it's certainly it's all about students, right? And how they're able to how the school systems are able to leverage technology to be able to help students to be able to reach their goals and be able to have those outcomes, that they want to look for. So technology has to be able to improve not just the kind of the physical activities of being able to get done, but it also has to be able to give those outcomes. So that means IT has to have a kind of a balancing act, right? Be able to, how do I innovate with the budget that I have and be able to manageability, but at the same time bring in those legacy applications, be able to make sure teachers, have what they need, because, teachers are used to being able to pull in whatever content that they need for a particular class. So it ends up that these school systems have to support that, support those tools anyway. And so, that technology also needs to be able to support digital transformation. And while Windows 10 can play a big role in that, again, the challenges are associated with how do I do these activities? How do I manage the migration to Windows 10 at the same time transform myself to have much more effective solutions for our users, our customers, our students to be able to be effective. I know one thing that specifically on the educator side in education is how do I make sure that the educators are ready to leverage Windows 10's new capabilities for the classroom.
That's a big thing, right? I mean, I think especially something like inking can make a huge difference in the classroom.
Yep.
But you have to get to that point. You have to get to Windows 10 so they can leverage that kind of tool.
And this is something that we don't talk about a whole lot, but this is something that we've done with some very large school systems where we have set up education plans and be able to train the trainers or train the educators to be able to say, this is what Windows 10 can bring to the table. Here's some ways that we believe that can affect your students in a positive way.
And that's something I've really tried to drive home with our sales reps too, because I was a teacher for several years, and I think one of the biggest challenges we faced is that even sometimes when we had technology, we didn't know the best way to use it. So how can I take this new technology? How can I take Windows 10 and turn it into something that's impactful in my classroom and really is helping my students grasp new concepts in ways like never before?
Absolutely.
So we both know that Lenovo is uniquely qualified to help with these kinds of transitions, but can you go into a little detail about our Windows 10 migration service offering?
Sure. So, we focus in on how can we help with that readiness perspective. First and foremost, what are the things that need to be done to be able to do the baseline migration? Application readiness. Not only understanding what applications need to be migrated, but also, what needs to be done on the infrastructure side as well. Do I change how I manage my devices? Do I need to upgrade my software on how I manage my devices? Are the things associated with just how Active Directory or any of the other parts of the infrastructure even touch that device? And then there's the kind of the deployment readiness. What are the things associated with being able to get users up to speed, help desks up to speed, and then the migration path of how do I take care of net new devices? And how do I get for existing devices? When you're creating that deployment plan, certainly that's one of the challenges that we see as customers trying to figure out what are the ins and outs of just the physical deployment, and then how do I take advantage of that kind of post migration productivity. There are opportunities, especially with Windows 10, to take advantage of some of the new capabilities, be able to increase productivity, make things simpler, certainly with Cortana and some of the other functions, to be able to do that. So it's not just getting people on Windows 10, it's getting them on Windows 10 effectively.
I hear you. And I just think our experience as a global technology leader in collaboration with our really strong partnership with Microsoft gives us unique insight to really support those smooth migrations.
Absolutely. We work tightly with Microsoft on these things. In fact, we've partnered with them for the last few years, in fact, on not just the general transition to Windows 10, but specifics down to customers. No matter what the segment, there's opportunities to be able to improve how we do things. And our relationship from Microsoft, whether it's from analysis or device decisions to final rollout, end user training, all those things we're walking hand in hand with Microsoft.
I love it. It really spells out a truly comprehensive service offering that
Absolutely.
we're able to give our customers.
Absolutely.
So thank you for highlighting this so well for all of our sales reps who are listening. One of the hardest parts of a transition like this is provisioning. So would you mind taking a second to say a few words about how we can help out there?
Sure. Provisioning is probably one of the more popular parts of what Microsoft calls modern deployment, or what we a lot of times call agile IT, which is the ability to be able to leverage a preload and instead of building a custom image. So and provisioning that, just like you provision your phone, right? We don't build images for phones. We provision them to be able to work within an environment, and that's the approach that Microsoft is taking with Windows 10. It's great that we talk about these things because there's different opportunities, different capabilities that we can leverage to be able to kind of enable this modern deployment or agile IT space. Things like being able to have certainly our signature preload is quite clean and there's very little content in there, but there's opportunities to make it even cleaner. So we work with customers around custom deployments, custom preloads, our enterprise-ready preloads or ready-to-provision preloads. I've worked with a few customers personally where they say, James, I just don't want to be in the imaging business anymore. I want to be able to have a simpler process for my users, and I want to be able to use your preload to make that happen. And certainly there's a few different custom options as well where we can do a lot of the customizations that customers were used to with custom imaging, but they don't have to manage an image anymore. There's just a preload that they provision.
Which I'm sure to them sounds like, oh, happy day.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
happy day.
They see it as the kind of the utopia or that aspirational goal of being able to have a user self-service process or a user self-deploy, and they see this as an enabler for that.
And we can certainly help them get there.
Yeah.
So now that we understand Windows 10 migration and where Lenovo can step in and help, let's wrap it up by having you share what you're hearing from our customers.
Sure. I get to work with a lot of customers in a lot of different areas, but still it is segment that the application compatibility is still the number one inhibitor. They still struggle. I have plenty of customers who say, yep, we have a Windows 10 image or we have a Windows 10 deployment process, but I can't roll it out. I can only roll it out to a handful of folks. Whether it's particular segments that are okay with the limited functionality or limited app compatibility, there's still large swaths of the organization that aren't ready to go because of that application compatibility. There's plenty of things to do. Most of our customers, in my experience, have been choosing to use the traditional IT route of a custom image and, their PC, leveraging their existing infrastructure essentially to be able to deploy 10. But there is that segment of our customers that are very intrigued by the modern deployment and agile IT capabilities. So they see that as a parallel effort to evaluate, to do proof of concepts, but they don't want to let that slow them down. So that hybrid approach to how they want to deploy their machines, how they want to roll them out, that's something that that aligns very well with our capabilities.
And with that, we have come to the end of our podcast. James, I want to thank you again so much for sharing your Windows 10 migration knowledge with us. And of course, we want to thank Intel for continuing to sponsor our podcast series. All you sales folks out there, please keep in mind that we do have even more great info to share with you on the topic of Windows 10 migration services. So be sure to check out Lenovo.com for our recent webinar with James, as well as Windows 10 training materials and our Windows 10 transition services. Don't forget, you can access other podcasts by visiting our public podcast YouTube channel, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.